Today, I am going to be playing one of Bach's finest and greatest and most complex of organ pieces, the Passacaglia in C minor. Before I do that, I'd like to talk about why this was written and some of the maybe insights on what's going on in this piece. So I'll start with a question. How do you feel about walking from Peterborough to Montreal now, in the middle of winter? 400 kilometers? Maybe 78, 80 hours worth of walking? Well, the reason I'm bringing this up is Bach, at the age of 20, had just landed an incredibly prestigious job as an organist in Arnstadt at the new church, and he asked for a month off so that he could go walk from Arnstadt to Lubeck, which basically is from the middle of Germany to the north of Germany, because he wanted to go and study or listen or play with or hear the greatest organist at the time, a guy called Dietrich Buxtehude. And so he got permission from the church to take a month off and go and see what was going on with Buxtehude. And as Bach said, to comprehend one thing or another about the art of Buxtehude. So that's why he went. He didn't go just for 1 month. He actually overstayed and wasn't back for 4 months almost. And this caused a fair bit of trouble with the church authorities. But why did Bach want to go? Well, here he was at age 20, already an astoundingly accomplished performer. He knew everything there was to know about pipe organs. There was a brand new organ of which he was a consultant in the church, and he's also just a stunning performer. He was the #1 musician in town, and at the age of 20, he felt the desire to learn, to soak up, to know more about the world of music, and there just wasn't anything better in town. So he went, off he went, walked for, we don't know the details. Did he hitch a ride with a stagecoach for part of the way? We don't know. But once he was there, I need to tell you a bit about Buxtehude. He was everyone's dream of the organ post that you might have in Germany at that time. He had a lot of freedom to do what he wanted. He was composing, he was playing for church, he was setting up Sunday night concerts, he was writing for orchestras, all kinds of choirs, and some occasions there might be 3 orchestra, 5 choirs performing all together. He was really the man, and he's getting on in age, 68 or so, and actually passed away quite soon afterwards. But Bach went and had a great time. When he came back, he was just so full of ideas. In fact, he'd copied a lot of Buxtehude's music and brought it back with him, and much of the music that we have of Buxtehude today comes from those copied sources. Bach, in his incredible calligraphy, wrote out and copied, and those are where we find a lot of Buxtehude's original music today. So Bach learned a lot, came back in trouble with the church. That position didn't last much longer, and he moved on to another church in nearby before becoming the court musician in Weimar. But so that's a bit of the background there. I am completely in love with the Passacaglia and have been since I first heard the piece. I learned organ at boarding school in England, where I spent 6 years. Fabulous chapel with a great organ, and at the age of 16 I moved from piano to organ. Had my grade 10, or in Associated Board in England, grade 8, and started the organ. I was very fortunate in that there was another student in my year by the name of James Lancelot, by far the most astounding musician of his age in England at the time. He really was a star, just brilliant. And he had his FRCO at the age of 15, took me to age 24 to get mine. He became organ scholar of King's College, Cambridge, and then a very distinguished career, ended up as cathedral organist in Durham. I got to hear him practicing. I was able to creep in in the evenings, everything was dark, just the organ high up on the wall of the church with its lights on. I got to creep in and listen to him practicing, and I was so impressed by the Passacaglia in C minor. I wanted it. I wanted to learn it. I was kind of short of money at that stage. It was a bit of a thing to even get me to boarding school. So I actually borrowed a copy and I wrote it out by hand. I just copied it and created my own score of the Passacaglia. Yeah, it took me quite a while, and it probably helped my musicianship significantly as well. And not too long after that, I started learning this incredible piece. So it goes back about 50 years when I first played it. So it has special meaning to me. Now, a Passacaglia is a term for a kind of theme and variations, but of a special type. The theme is heard in the bass part for the most part, and then this theme is repeated again and again, and you do different things to make it interesting, and eventually you're done. And Bach had, with him, had brought back Buxtehude's Passacaglia in D minor. And when Bach wrote his piece, which very much was to honor his visit to Buxtehude, he actually started with the same few notes in the key of C minor, not D minor, as Buxtehude. And I'm just going to show you that right now. Here is the opening, the way Buxtehude would have done it. It would have sounded like this. So that's the beginning of Buxtehude's Passacaglia, and here's the opening of Bach's. All you have to do is invert it, and you got the same thing. So in those days, that wasn't plagiarism. That was expressing your admiration when you took someone else's music and did something with it. I have listened to Bach's Buxtehude's Passacaglia, and it's not worth the effort to learn. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's very exciting, but for me, the Bach piece is so much better. It's hard to imagine spending time on the Buxtehude. I guess I shouldn't say that, because my honored friends, other organ professionals, would esteem the Buxtehude very highly. But somehow it just doesn't have the breadth and the depth of Bach's version of it. Okay, so now we will just talk a little bit about what Bach is doing. Here is his theme. 15 notes. He is going to take those 15 notes and he is going to repeat them 20 times, 20 variations of the most extraordinary nature that you can imagine. And after he's done that, he's going to add a fugue based on much of the same material. Now, when you start studying Bach's music, there are endless ideas about what's going in it, what is he trying to say, what is he hiding in there. Then you can really get in pretty deep. Has he written this in with some deep theological meaning? We don't know, because he didn't tell us, but there are some pretty convincing arguments. For example, Marie-Claire Alain has come up with a concept that a whole bunch of chorales, German hymns, are hidden in the variations. Now here is how the third variation starts, if I can find my way around my paperwork here. We hear this in the, here we go. So what we've heard is, and this will be the third variations. Well, it just so happens one of Bach's chorales has the very same theme, different key, and that's what we have on variation number 3. Let's go back to the very first one, not as obvious. This is what we hear. And if we are to take the top notes, we find that this is taken from another chorale, Nun komm der Heiden, and it's in A minor. about all the way through, and if you stretch things far enough, it reminds me of standing stones in England. We all know about Stonehenge. We all know that things are pointed to line up with special events in the solar system, in the universe. Well, there's another 10,000 of these stone things in England, not as spectacular. And inevitably, when you got two stones, you can cook up something to say, well, on the 3rd of October, every 15th year, whatever, it lines up with the moon. So you're going to win sooner or later. And in a way, I feel the musicologists are doing that with the Passacaglia. But nevertheless, there's some extraordinary things going on in the way he's carefully crafted this piece. When we get to the end of the fugue, 7 is kind of a special number for a lot of theologians and for Bach. And as he winds up the fugue, he makes sure that the final chord builds and builds and builds. We have 3 parts, 4 parts, 5. Pedal's going to add 6, and then finally we have 7 notes on the last chord. Anything. We all know that Bach is crazy about the number 14, because if you take his name, Bach, B-A-C-H, well, B is the second letter, let's give that 2. A is the first letter, let's give that 1. C is the third, etc., etc. You add up, you get 14. Okay, how many bars in this piece? 293. If you add up 2 plus 9 plus 3, what do you get? It's 14. So these are the kinds of crazy things that musicologists will spend forever debating and talking about. I don't know if it really gets you that far, because you don't need to know a darn thing to understand how powerful and how wonderful this piece of music is. The Passacaglia moves through the 20 variations, one climax, then back down, up again to another one. And along the way, he does some clever tricks. He writes counterpoint, things that can work either on top or underneath on the bottom. So we have, for example, in one of the variations here, where the subject, the counter subject, I guess I should call it, is going to be quite, here we go. That's how it goes, and underneath we hear the melody. That's variation number 10. Number 11, we take the same thing and we put it down 2 octaves, and we have the same thing happening now. The melody's on top, but the same notes are used below. He's taken one thing, inverted it. You wouldn't really know it to listen to, but it's all there note for note. And then we have in number 12, 13, 14, and 15, he's in this diminishing mode. And for number 12, we always have 4 notes at a time playing. Number 13, 3 notes at a time. You know what's coming. Number 12, only going to be 2 notes at a time. And finally, when we get to the final one of the chopping this all down, we're down to 1 note at a time. And so on and so on. So some ideas about what's going on. One last thing to explain is the fugue. We get to the end of the 20th variation, and he moves directly into a fugue. He's going to take his original melody of 8 bars and cut it into 2. So for the main fugue subject, we use the first half of the theme. And some notes. And then he moves into some other material. But what is that other material that he's going to use? Well, actually, if we look at that carefully, that is built from the second part of the fugue. Da 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 da. And here we have it. So again, very carefully, he puts this all together. And I've talked enough about this. It is time to play the Passacaglia and Fugue in C minor. I will be asking my daughter Rebecca to come and turn pages. Rebecca was on her way for a career in acting in London, England when COVID hit, and she had to return home from London, England to Canada, and it's been delightful to have her here with us. And yeah, she's back on the organ bench, which she more or less grew up on as a little girl. So here comes the Passacaglia and Fugue in C minor. And I think that was worth walking from Arnstadt to Lubeck and back.